And where did you get that tanned face from? I know.
Well, I've had my grey highlights put in as we swiftly step into episode 8 of this season. Cheeky little break in Mallorca, not very long, but just a little 5 days of doing not very much. Read 2 books.
Oh.
One I thought was going to be really interesting, but wasn't. It was by a man called Bo Su, who is the 2 times world debating champion.
Oh, okay.
And it was all about how to debate and kind of discuss stuff well.
Okay.
I wouldn't buy it.
You're trying to be so politically correct. I'm loving it. You're like,
it wasn't what I hoped for, I think, would be my summary.
Do you think did he make it relatable? Like,
there was 450 pages that he probably could have done in 20.
Ah, right, okay. Yeah. Oh, shame.
It was a nice story. He's clearly a smart lad.
Yeah. Oh, what was the other one?
Inverting the Pyramid, which is a bit of a classic football text around the history of football tactics. And I was more interested in some of the later stuff. But what I did like within it, there was a comment in there about how back in like the very early 1900 type period of playing football, there was a formation, and it was talked about in the Scottish Athletic Journal, about how they used to have 2 players back to keep the goalkeeper in conversation.
Very interesting.
Which I think looks a lot like a lot of 7- and 8-year-old football, where the coach says to the players, "You are defenders, you stand all the way back there, even if the ball is 30 yards away."
Right.
Just to keep the goalkeeper in conversation.
So
yes. But it was nice. A nice little break. And how are you?
I'm good. We had a good win last Sunday, so that's good momentum going into the season. Although it's not all about winning, it's a nice way to start. We had a really long pre-season, so I was kind of glad to see the back of that. And then a couple of different things. I'm doing a really cool course at Loughborough University on athlete well-being. So it's over 3 months, and then a portfolio. Started a couple of other different courses. Doing a couple of books with Amy Whitehead, which is really interesting.
Nice.
And some coach development projects that I'm delighted to be part of. So tap.
Lovely.
Yeah, they're all in good space. I mean, I like creating this space for perspective. I think we talked about this before, but it's nice to just have a moment to either be lifted up by an event or a conversation, or to be challenged, or just to have an enjoyable one, so those kind of multiple angles definitely keep me thinking.
Nice. Well, my quote of the week this week that we've never done before, but I now have one.
It's now going to take us off.
No. So we were coming back on Sunday afternoon. We'd been to an art exhibition with my wife and son, and we went via this car garage, but he's suddenly now really into cars. Don't know why.
Wow.
And we went past this garage on the way home, of which on the forecourt they had a Ferrari and a Jaguar. It was a very posh little garage. And the voice from the 8-year-old came through from the back seat that said, "Sometimes things that are further away are actually closer. And then sometimes things that are closer are further away. That's the problem with life." I mean, wisdom from an 8-year-old. I'm not sure what to do with it, but
wow. Well, he's obviously in your house listening to the conversations between you and Bex.
Yeah.
And how deep and profound they are. That's really interesting. What was your take? Did you pause and engage? Did you?
No, we laughed.
Let's go get an ice cream.
Wow. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah,
life
really,
of an 8-year-old.
really incredible. Love that. I don't know if we pay attention to their observations and comments and quotes enough. I don't have children myself, so it's my sister's kids or other one. I used to work in schools, but yeah, they're really perceptive, aren't they?
Something going on in his little head.
Yeah. Well, speaking of young children, we were at reacted in the Twitter sphere to a video of a young person on what looks to be kind of a football pitch or a space where lots of footballs are heading around. She's kicking a ball, and then she goes to the end of the line and performs this like next level gymnastics, twists and flips and turns and bridges and arch. Did you see it?
I did, yeah. Mustafa Saka sent it to us, didn't he?
Mustafa did, guided us, yes.
Our musings.
What are your initial thoughts?
She's a cool gymnast.
Yeah.
And I know she was doing this at a football session. But clearly the thing that she's talented at is like, she's definitely done some gymnastics stuff, you would suggest.
Yeah.
And my guess was she was 6, maybe about that, 5, 6, 7 kind of age group, I would think. And yeah, maybe 6, 7. And I was then thinking about Callum's rugby at the weekend, and they're 8-year-olds, and the practice was going on, and there was one kid, Jack, just spinning. He had one arm out, don't know why he went with one, but he had one arm out and he was just spinning. But you had coaches that were wanting to talk about tackling, because they're now into contact and technique and doing this and rules of the game and breaking lines and defensive arrows and like all of this, like. But Jack just was very happy spinning.
I love it.
I feel like that girl.
Yeah, like that girl that I'd be on the sideline, read the room. It's only one kid, but like, so first of all, it made me smile. And I am very caught up in videos, images, quotes, interactions with people that have the power to make someone else smile. Even if it's momentary, even if it's just a little section in their day that lingers and revisits this. I just think it's so powerful. So I smiled. I noticed that football, didn't, from my minimal amount of exposure in football, she doesn't look like she's on her path to be a professional footballer in how she approached the ball and how she kicked it. But she very well, I'm not getting into talent ID, but she doesn't have a negative appearance in the "this isn't for me, I don't want to be here," goes up, gives her best swinging leg, launches her leg into the air, goes to the end of the line. And I just think it's amazing. There's no, what looks to me is an environment that has, okay, there is a line of 4 people and you could pick out that, but I don't want to go to the negatives. But she's coming to the line, she knows what needs to be done. It doesn't look like there's an awful restriction on success criteria. We can't hear what's happening in the background. But I do see in the wider background loads of footballs, loads of people, some singing, some coaching, lots of movement. So I'm kind of going, wow, this is a space that anyone is welcome. I'm making loads of assumptions here. There's some girls in front of her, or some young people in front of her, that have their arms folded and they're waiting for their go. So there's stuff we could nitpick at. And I did see lots of people talked about this, like, should she be there? She should be off in gymnastics. Of course she should be there. She's out in the fresh air. She's young people around her. She doesn't seem to be not wanting to kick a ball, and nobody seems to be making her stand in a line, and wait your turn and do this and do that. But I just thought it was really interesting. There's a lot of things to be taken from that.
The environment looked nice,
didn't it?
Yeah, it was lots of people spread out, and like 4 in a line is, maybe the maximum. Let's say, they don't have to wait that long for the turn, do they? No. And especially if you can fill that space with some flips and twists and even better, right?
Yeah.
But she didn't also have a coach stood next to her saying, you have to put your non-kicking foot here, you have to do this, you have to. There wasn't any of that. It just looked like, here's the ball, just give it a whack.
Yeah.
Which at that age is cool, But...
And okay, go back to my first comment, which I know probably made you twitch and raise your eyebrow. Let's say she has a really enjoyable experience here, goes off and does other bits and pieces everywhere in and out of sport, but has had such a nice experience here. keeps her athleticism and says, do you know what, I want to come back into football. And there's another entry point, there's an exit entry point. And, you know, she may have a relationship with the people or the coaches in this space that goes, yeah, come on back in and we'll see, you know. And I think then of the kind of senior professional level we're in at the moment, and I'm not saying that people should be doing cartwheels on the pitch, but what about this, like, are you ready? You know, get focused. Our session starts at this time. What about that few minutes beforehand, which we do, and Conch, the manager, is really adamant that there is that chance for the players to come out and connect and play two touch or have a laugh or joke around, and then we get into what the session is about. Or I might do a piece beforehand, or a, you know, intentional question or something. But there's that lightheartedness and people are joking around, and sometimes the coaches join in. That it reminded me of a whole lot of things here, you know, and the fact that, you know, to me, look like young girls that are playing, which we want to be an advocate of all young people playing sport, but opening the channels and doors to everybody.
Yeah, I think why is she there? And we have no idea.
No.
But we know that young people play sport because they make new friends or to be with their mates. So she might just be there to be with their mates. And we had this conversation on Saturday. So Callum's team had their first kind of organised fixture of the season. And one of the players played in goal. And he's probably not quite as good as some of the other kids. Mm-hmm. And at one stage, because we played 4 quarters and we have 4 different goalkeepers because they all take their turns because everyone plays everywhere. And he was stood there, and his dad is one of the coaches, and he said, he doesn't look engaged. He's not switched on. So I was like, and I said to him, well, but why is he here? I said, if he's here because he's with his mates, and there's a few mates from school, and he's with his new football mates, that might be all right for him. Yeah. You know, he doesn't have to look like constantly ready and alert. And and actually, that might be enough.
Yeah.
That might be enough. And we just have this feeling that they should all look like this perfect young athlete that listens and pays attention, and we know that that's not the case. And we after training on Tuesday night, we had a long conversation with the kids and the parents, 2 separate groups. Then we came together about our safety, learning, respect, our stuff for the code of conduct. So we had that on Tuesday night.
Oh, wow.
And one of the kids said to the parents, my learning gets affected when I get shouted at. And his dad doesn't necessarily shout at him, but I think he interrupts his playing of the game.
That's so powerful, Nick.
And I mean, plus his dad was in 29 Commando unit, like he's a big man. He's
so then you hit behind the kid. Keep going.
Step back away from the situation. But what a powerful message for an 8-year-old to share this, right? A
lovely practical example of when people talk about their perceptions of parents, like they were willing to get in a room, they were willing to have separate and then collective conversations, the courage and environment you've created for those young people to say what they need to say and to feel comfortable doing that. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, and it was needed. But like during the session, I was talking to the kids at one stage, and one of the mums and an older brother were playing football, probably 40, 50 yards away in a goal. She's quite a cool mum. And 3 or 4 of the kids were just watching. But they weren't listening to me. They were looking that way. Mm-hmm. So I kind of flippantly, and kind of regret how I said it, but kind of said, do you want to go and play down there with them? Right. I said, or we can concentrate and listen to what we're doing here so that you know the next practice. To which they went, oh, no. And my son and one other still kind of kept looking down there. But interesting, one of the other kids who's quite bright, he's quite talented, he moved himself away from the other 2 kids to come and stand somewhere else. Yeah. So as a learner, I'm going, he's recognized the distraction at the moment is the other 2 that are looking down there. Yeah. And I'm going to step out of that situation and come and listen somewhere else.
Wow.
which I quite liked. I didn't say anything to it, and I didn't say anything to anybody else at the time. This is the first time I've kind of shown it, but yeah, again, why should I think all 12 kids at 8 years old have the ability to concentrate on me when I'm way less interested than, you know, the other two playing down there?
Well, I mean, listen, that says a lot about you, doesn't it, really, in the awareness level, but also the ability and willingness to notice within a session of that shift, to have a conversation, to reflect on how you deliver the message, but still allow them a bit of space to wander mentally. Maybe it was a really long day. Maybe that is just a break that they needed. Maybe that they're really focused usually, and they just draw, you know, the noise, like it's just and again, this is when we're talking about this clip. It would be really interesting to get a group of people together to have a chat. And obviously we'd encourage people to comment when we do put it on our Twitter feed and this video comes out, of like, what did you see? You know, and you said there like about focus, and I was thinking weirdly when you were saying that about faces and stuff, you cycle a lot, and I'm thinking, you know, as a cyclist, if you go into a big hill, you know, like you could have a certain face on, you could be laughing to yourself, just like, oh, I'm never going to get through this, or yes, you can, and telling yourself a joke, and people are thinking you're having a jolly because they associate smiles, and then a focused face looks like, what does an engaged body face look like? You know, it's so interesting when you stop and think of how quick we are to say, this is a happy, this is a sad, this is a scared, you know. There's a really good link to that I'll put in. I watched a clip a couple of months ago, Lisa Feldman Barrett at a Wired live event, and she kind of demystifies some of the kind of emotions and facts that people would have picked up misused over the years. So I'll put that link in. The link's still on.
It's a great point. What advice would you give to a coach? Because we very quickly jump to a conclusion when you see something. How would you support coach to not jump to that conclusion and be curious first? What kind of tactics or tips would you have?
So that's a really good question. The immediate one that came to me was, are you giving yourself time to do it? So I guess thinking of, if it's a Sunday morning grassroots and you want to get them prepared for a game, or you're manipulating it so they win the game, or you can get them to a playing stage of things, like understanding the motives, but noticing and giving yourself time to notice is just so important. Now, if you've assumed that they're not having a good time because they've got a sad face, then a couple of questions or a little one-to-one as the thing is continuing on, like, where are our key moments to pause and learn? Water breaks, during reps, when they're at the end of a line, when they're moving from one activity to another. So even not just on the learning, but that could be enjoyment too. How you on today? How many people have you chatted to? How many balls have you hit? How was your day? Like, whatever. And I know we said we could have those at the start, but those are little opportunities for you to purposefully interact with the participants. But I do think that noticing is a little bit of your own awareness and a little bit of time, but just pausing to think about this. Even at the end of the session, did I notice anything? And then I guess the tricky part is, and we had this conversation at West Ham recently where we talked about, at the end of the session, have I done enough? And my question to the wider coaching team outside the players was, well, what if the enough part is subjectively at the other end of the spectrum for two players, and it completely isn't anywhere near what we need? So we have the objective measures from a physical output point of view, from a session objective point of view, and analysis. But how do you get to that point? And I think another part of that is the sharing. Fortunately, for some people, you have more than one person in a coaching environment that you could go, I've just seen this here. This kid has stepped away. Do you think they need water? Do you think they want to come away from the distracted bunch? Do you think they're not enjoying it? Do you think they're sad? Like, there's a whole heap of things that one young person moving away from two people who are distracted could be. And I guess that's building your bank of experiences as well as your reflections. That's my initial thought on that anyway.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think that's the human nature bit. And I think if understanding the baseline of each person's normal or normalized behavior is helpful.
There's another one that isn't on a pitch, but I'll just share it because it might be helpful for some. So when people talk about the arms crossed and that's defensive, when I was in a meeting yesterday and we were working with some of our interns and supporting them, and it was Kim, the head of physical, and myself, and we were in an office that had a desk, and we kind of positioned ourselves in a triangle way, and we were chatting back and forth. And every time I spoke, he leaned back and crossed his arms. Now, I know that from a comfort perspective and a listening angle, that's his space. He leans back, he folds his arm, rests his hands and listens. For others, he'd be like, oh, here she comes now. I don't want to hear anything she has to say. But it was me understanding that I was able to read the room, that when he created a space for me to add to whatever we're speaking about, that he wanted to assume that role of giving me space by shifting back in his seat, folding his arm because that's a comfortable spot, and then acknowledging that I'd spoke, thanking me for that, and coming back in and sat down because he was focusing on when he needed to speak, what would that look like? So, it's understanding what those movements and behaviors look like.
Nice.
I do think we have come to time, but if we haven't, I could direct people towards what we're talking about next week. And maybe we could just a little bit of a touch on it. I know that you're always on Twitter, and not always, I won't say excessively, but when you do, it has an impact. It has people sharing, people talking about it, comments and retweets. I know I'm embarrassing you now, but there was one during the week that when you posted it, one of my staff members or one of my colleagues sent me it and said, "Oh, what do you think about this?" And I said, "Good old Nick, stirring the pot, brilliant. Give us a little snippet of what it was. You don't need to go into the thread because we will talk about it next week, but just so people can look at it in advance."
Yeah, there was a video that did the rounds of the end of the warm-up for Manchester City football match, and the kit man was obviously collecting the training tops that the players had been wearing before they then went and started the game. And a couple of the players just chucked the tops over. There was one on the floor already. One of the players chucked it on the kit man's head. Banter type stuff, good relationships. But one of the other players, Erling Haaland, folded it up, brought it over, gave it straight to the kit man, put it in his hands. The kit man patted him on the back, and off he went. And again, we can draw a lot of conclusions from that, but it certainly kind of sparked some interest from me from some experiences that I'd had previously in England football jobs, watching sessions and the role of people around the periphery versus the role of the players in terms of managing the environment, I guess. But it seemed to have prompted a few thoughts.
What a teaser. I was literally going to speak there and I had to hold my words in my mouth because come to the end of the session. Episode done, Jen. Don't go into it. But I am going to retweet it onto our Coach Convo. So check it out. It's at Coach Convo on Twitter. We'd love to see what your environment looks like around this topic and aspect, or if you have any experience or thoughts on it, and equally with the clip that we've talked about today. coachconversation@gmail.com. That's also where you can drop us an email if you want to have a longer conversation. Pick up the phone, we can have a chat. Until next week, have a good week and take care of yourself. Bye.
Bye.